Welcome back. You're watching the India Development Debate with me, Nayantara Rai. It's the first transformational and organizational change in more than 165 years for the Indian Railways. The Narendra Modi government has announced the big Indian railway reform. It's a massive reform that has been carried out, spearheaded by the Railway Minister Piyush Goyal. There's going to be a structural churning of the Railway Board. Under the new approved structure, the Railway Board is going to consist of 4 members and a chairperson, a reduction from the current 8. The Railway Board is going to have members for infrastructure, rolling stock, traction, finance and operations, and business development. The aim is to have a leaner structure that's going to have more focus on efficiency and revenue generation. Piyush Goyal led Indian Railways under Modi 2.0 is aiming to usher in transformational reforms across the national transporters network. One very key aspect of enhancing the infrastructure and passenger experience on Indian Railways involves roping in the private sector. What's going to be the exact impact on these reforms for the Indian Railways for you, me, and the investor? That's what I'm going to be discussing today. And joining me, Professor S Ramakrishnan, visiting faculty at the National Rail and Transport Institute, as well as Kishore Desai, the former officer on special duty at the Niti Aayog. Professor, if I could come to you first, with what has been announced by the Railway Minister Piyush Goyal, what has been decided by the Narendra Modi cabinet, can you help us first understand that, are you impressed? Is this indeed going to simplify a very complex organization?
The experts have been asking for this HR reforms for the last, say, almost a decade, and the reforms have actually now initiated. Of course, the same reforms have started in the previous regime also. For example, sending back the lower staff back to the service, back to the railway maintenance operation, who were already doing the household work of railway officers. So it has already started, and even reducing the number of class 1 officers in the railway board, and then sending them back to the field for speedy execution of the railway projects and better operation of the railways. So it has been already happening, and now things have moved to the next level, where they have decided to reform the board, and with all the proper the correct languages, because now the chairman is not going to be a chairman per se, he is going to be the chief executive officer, CEO, which will have a different flavor and different, the language also matter a lot in deciding about that. And then there will be only single cadre of Indian Railway Management Service instead of having 8 services earlier. So although people will be recruited based on their engineering, from both engineering as well as non-engineering backgrounds, at one point of time, after say 15 years of service, assume that the officer is joining at the age of 25, and he may, at the age of 40, he should become a generalist, and then should be able to deliver on all dimensions of railway expectations, than confining himself only to the domain expertise. So this is the basic requirement, which will without this it is impossible to expect delivery on the ground, especially when the government wanted to invest 50 lakh crores in the next 10 years.
Right. If I could now go across to Kishore Desai, you've just heard the professor say how this was an important ask for over a decade, simplifying the Indian railway structure. I want to also ask you is, with the chairman now being the CEO, how will that role change? What all is that going to really mean on ground? Does that basically mean the buck stops with him or her?
So Nayantara, I think I'll just take one step back here. We just need to understand the magnitude of this reform. Normally in corporate world also, we do not hear such large scale overhauling of institutional structures. And here we are talking about Indian Railways, which has been into business for the last 150 plus years. It is a 1.3 million plus organization. It's such a large organization that has been working, and more importantly, it's a government entity. Now this is being attempted. Now this complete overhaul of the entire railway structure is being attempted. I think it's a very bold move. So the government, if you see the reforms, so there are 2 or 3 important things that the government has done. One, it has restructured the railway organization per se, the officer, the grade A officer cadre. Second, it has also restructured the railway board. So earlier, so that's the question you had asked, so earlier if you see the composition of the board, so there was a chairman and there were few members who were sort of organized into various departments. So for example, member engineering headed sort of the civil department, member mechanical headed the mechanical department, and so on and so forth. What happened was this entire structure sort of created lot of silos, departmentalism, so to speak. Now I'll give you one interesting example. Before I joined Niti Aayog, I was actually working for a very large private sector technology company, and they had actually come up with a solution. This solution was actually to do with inspecting the integrity of rail tracks. So it had 2 devices. One, a device which transmitted certain signals passing through tracks, and then there was a receiver. Now, because it was to be placed in locomotives, we had to talk to 2 directorates, the electrical directorate and the mechanical directorate. Because the signals passed through tracks, we had to talk to civil directorate. This entire communication between multiple directorates literally slowed everything down. When you change this and when you make the chairman of the railway board sort of responsible for the overall direction, and when you change the structure from departments on to sort of functional basis, what you do essentially is you provide railways a tool to be smart, fast and very agile. So I think that way this is sort of giving them a great institutional tool to improve the overall efficiency and speed of decision making.
I take your point. It is indeed overhauling a structure. So it's going to be interesting to see how it is carried out as well with minimal protests on ground. Professor, that question is for you. When you're going to have a massive reorganization, when you're going to get rid of departments, you're going to have a leaner, more efficient Indian Railways organization. Can it lead to redundancies? It would obviously, I would imagine, lead to redundancies in the private sector, but in the public sector, what would be the best way to tackle that problem?
Yeah, fine. I mean, right now, although the railway officers, class 1 railway officers coming from 8 services are extremely happy in their cocooned service cadre, they are not getting enough opportunities to explore and learn new things. That's a fact actually. So they don't get actually enough opportunities as much as an IAS officer gets. So this is going to be Indian Railway Management Service is going to give them new avenues and make them really leaders, make them really change agents. Because class 1 officers are change agents. They are not the ones who come to the office and then do their regular work and then go back. That is not what the government is expecting, and that is what, that is the reason why we have recruited, we want them to be change agents, and that is the reason why we have recruited them for, class 1 officer post at the very young age and give them a big responsibility. So what I am saying is, when class 1 officers of railway move out of railways and work for various organizations, say for example, there are multiple metro organizations in India, starting from Delhi Metro, Bangalore Metro, then Chennai Metro. There are more than 1.5 dozen metro systems in India, and most of the people have been deputed or sent from railway system, system only. Similarly, when it comes to National High Speed Rail Corporation or whether it comes to NCRTC, people were sent only from railways, and when they go to the new organization, they do extremely well because they get a lot of new opportunities, a lot of unrestricted opportunities, and then a lot of avenues which they don't get unfortunately in railway system.
I take that point, Professor.
So my point is that this is not going to actually affect.
Professor. In fact, on that note, I'm going to go across to Kishore Desai. Very important point that the professor was making, and I'm going to go a step beyond that when you're talking of opportunities and how you're going to have a more efficient and trained staff as well. Now, the government has said it has no intentions of privatizing the Indian Railways, but once you get this reorganization, it could perhaps look at monetizing routes. It could perhaps look at inviting the private sector to partner the public sector. Do you see that happening?
So absolutely, Nayantara. See, I think, if we look at the basic intent of this move, It is essentially to help railways tune into the existing realities. See, there was a basic reason why the railways were organized into this department, and that reason was probably valid maybe 50 years, 60 years back. The same is no longer true now. Now railways is not operating in a vacuum. It is facing competition from roads, it is facing competition from airways. So, you know, it's not, if they do not change the way they work, if they do not take decisions which is sort of driven by the market dynamics, they will not survive, and we are seeing that. For example, overall revenues, there was a recent report by CAG which sort of red flagged the financial situation of railways. If you see the overall, you know, the freight loading in railways, that's also more or less, you know, it's not improving to the extent at which it should. Railways is not able to really capture the freight traffic share from other modes of transportation also. So now, using this, using this reform, I think the government is sort of trying to enable railways to take decisions to ensure that they are able to take decisions in the market, in a sort of market driven manner. Now there are two things. See, railways were always, the decision in railways were always driven by officers from railways. Now if you see, the third step which the government has done was, it has also restructured railway board, and not only it has done that, what it has done is it has opened up a small door for entry of professionals. They may or may not necessarily be from the railways. They could be private individuals also who are sort of, you know, stalwarts in their own field. So if you see the notification, it also says that people who have been eminent into various fields like academics, maybe economics, management, technology and so on, they can also get an opportunity to represent these different domains in the board, so that the decision making is not driven by inbreeding or similar thinking, but it becomes a more holistic and comprehensive.
You know, when we become more efficient, any office, any organization becomes leaner and more efficient, its operations cost also comes down. And maybe that is what the Railway Board Chairman was hinting today, that in the new year, fares could come down. Professor, if I could come to you, I can see you want to make a point to Kishore Desai, so please make your point. And also, what is this going to mean for railway fares according to you? Because while we talk of modernization, we talk about having a more modern organization, the Indians also have to get ready for the modern fares, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm echoing what Mr. Desai has told, that when we have external experts, because most of the times the railway officers work in the same organization for 30-35 years, and very unfortunately in the last 40 years the railway was considered as a political fiefdom by the previous ministers. Before Modi 1 came to power, it was considered, for the first time the Modi 1 government has completely changed that by merging the railway budget with the main budget, because otherwise the railway ministers used it as their political tool to announce many projects for which actually they don't have any money, and they announced a lot of trains, and in that process they have created a lot of congestion in the tracks, and it was like, we know how badly it was managed. So once the change of leadership has come, and once the political fiefdom is does not exist, the officers also have to change accordingly. That is a point. So till that time, okay, fine, political leadership is not good, fine, I am also not good. Now the political leadership is good, accordingly the people have to change. Second thing is, the railway officers, by virtue of working there for 30-35 years, unfortunately they understand only the constraints of not going for developmental works, or not going for new thinking, because they are always constrained by the past. Whereas when new people from, it may be experts from academics, it may be experts from industry, or it may be even IAS officers who are actually very bright and talented, if they are becoming part and parcel of the railway board, they bring a lot of new lease of air to the system, and even their lack of expertise in railways help railways to improve. So it is not always the expertise in railways that helps. It is lack of expertise also, because they are always, they are not chained by their thoughts because of the past, because of the legacy.
So let me also take that point back to Kishore Desai. What I was asking the professor, Kishore Desai, you know, you've had experience of the private sector and the public sector. So when we overhaul the organization of the railway board, modernize it, what do you think is going to happen to fares? We've got a hint of it today from the railway board chairman, who has hinted that freight rates at least are going to be rationalized.
So, Nayantara, I don't think there is an easy answer to the question that you have asked because fares is a very sensitive subject. But what do we mean by fare? So, there are two fares, right? So, there is a fares for passengers and then there is a fare for freight. Now, the problem is, you know, when I was at Niti Aayog, we did a small paper and we sort of analyzed the passenger segment of the business a bit in more detail, and we realized that amongst various classes of services that railways offers AC1, AC2, AC3, second class, sleeper, so on and so forth, it's only the AC third that makes profit, right? All other classes of railways are making huge losses, and there are subsidies, there are a lot of concessions and so on and so forth. Now, whether does the government take a call to now sort of, you know, make up for that loss? Now, that's a political call. I don't know if you, you know, so a couple of, I think last year or sometime, maybe few months back, the government had also announced setting up of a railway development authority, and one of the function of the authority could be to advise the government on setting up of tariffs. But having said that, exact setting up of tariff, the levels of tariff will always be a political call, which will be taken in the context of existing realities. But coming back to freight, now freight is a very important topic. Unfortunately, we have always used railways, the freight business of railways, to cross-subsidize the passenger business, and as a result now, the total freight cost of railways has actually become lesser competitive than even roads. So, if roads is also cheaper, in fact, you know, if you compare the end-to-end logistics cost, there are examples where it's cheaper for players to use roads than railways. This bit needs to change. Now, I am linking this to the organizational restructuring. Imagine if there are 3 or 4
6
senior
years is what we must bring out
who are from the private sector and who understand how private sector.
And in fact, Kishore, you know, while you're making this point, we should also highlight for our viewers that for the first time in 166 years, this is the first year where we have actually not seen accidents take place. And do remember, going into the year, going into 2019, the fatalities, the number of accidents, and how safety of the railways had become such a big talking point as well. I have to ask you this question also, Kishore. When you have this reorganization, when you're making the roles and empowering the board as well, safety, now you will know who the buck stops with as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said, Nayantara, is very right. You know, I am not seeing this reform as a single measure. It is a series of measures. It is one of the measures which the government has taken over a period of time. You mentioned safety. I think safety has not, the track record that we are seeing today is not come overnight. And since 2014, the government has been trying to make up, for the infrastructure deficit. The overall capital investments on safety and on capacity expansion has increased multiple times. And as a result, the overall result, we are seeing it right now. And I think all of this has happened because the government consciously took a decision to delegate more responsibilities down the line, to empower the railway board, to sort of infuse more fresh thinking. So I think all these are part of the broader thinking that it is now time for railways to become the preferred mode of transportation, to become a safe mode of transportation, and sort of, to capture the lost glory that railways had.
And gentlemen, with that I'm running out of time, but it is a massive reform that has taken place. The entire structure has been overhauled of a body which is 166 years old. I'm sure it's been very challenging to get everybody on board, but this is what the Narendra Modi cabinet has announced, and Piyush Goyal is of course going to be executing this. Just food for thought that I'm going to leave with our viewers with. China's first high-speed rail company is launching an IPO to raise over $5 billion. The news has come out. It's about 24 years old. Let's see if India can one day look at such a massive IPO that has been announced by Beijing. It's going to in fact look at selling 12.8% stake of this company, this Chinese state-owned railway company. When you have a big reform like this, while you may not have intentions of privatizing, you can certainly look to maybe one day go public also with the Indian Railways. With that, I'd like to thank both of my gentlemen for joining us here on this edition of India Development Debate.